And we'll do twice in English, once in Tibet. Is that okay? Okay. So you guys at home too, I hope you're doing this out loud and letting your family and your neighbors know that you are Buddhist practitioners of great delight. Okay. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Tonight we'll do it with melody. Dagla dang war je pe dra no par je pe geg. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Ma nam ka dam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag par zog pe zhang ju rin po she to pa ja. Gary, can you mute your microphone?
Can I mute my microphone?
Yes, please. Yeah, because it creates havoc over here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, no problem. All right. Action Bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De she du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Dren san sa wa danger par je pe pao dan la ma dam pa nam la kyab su chi o. Ye dam kil gur gi la sok nam la kyab su chi o. Sangye chom den de nam la kyab su chi o. Dam pe cho nam la kyab su chi o. Pa pe ge dun nam la kyab su chi o. Pa wo ka jo cho kyong song me shong yes she gi chang dang dem pa nam la kyab su chi o. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shangshu Ningpo Chiki Bar Sangye Namla Kyabsu Chi Chodang Shangshu Senpai Soklang Deshin Kyabsu Chi Jitar Nongi Deshegi Shangshu Togni Ke Padang Shangshu Sempe La Pala De Da Grimshin Ne Patar De Shin Drola Pendandu Shangshu Semni Ke Gishing De Shin Duni La Pala Rimpa Shindu La Parjiu. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chonamla Shangshu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Jinsoki Pe Sonamgi Drola Penshir Sangye Juparsho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yampe semchen tamshe dewa dang dewe gurdang dempar jorchik dug now dang de now gi gudang drelwar jorchik dug now me pe dewa dang mi drelwar jorchik Nei ring chak dang ni dang drelway dang namla nei par jorchi. Page 8 and 9, the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. So we read it once in English, and then we'll recite it, or we'll sing it 3 times in Tibetan, or Sanskrit actually, on page 9. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind-heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattvaha. We'll do a short meditation. So keep your back straight. If you're sitting on a cushion, legs folded. If you're sitting on a chair, your legs together. Keep your back straight. Hands 4 inches below your navel or at your knees or whatever is comfortable. Your chin down. Your eyes open or closed. Tongue up on the roof of your mouth behind your front teeth. Just stay relaxed. There's a lot of people here tonight in the other room, a lot of kids, so there's a lot of noise, so it's going to be a good preparation for you to practice one-pointed mindfulness despite all the surrounding noises and going on. So just concentrate on your breathing, watching your breath. So breathe in through both nostrils. Fill your lungs with fresh, clean, pure air. Hold the breath. Exhale. Squeeze the abdomen. Push all that stale, negative, dark air out. Hold it. Breathe in. Hold it. Exhale. Hold it. Breathe in. Out. That's 3. Breathe in. Out. That's 4. Breathe in. Watching that fresh, clean, pure air coming in. Filling your lungs. Exhale, stale, negative, dark air. Your empty lungs, holding that breath. That's 5. Breathe in. Exhale. That's 6. Breathe in. Exhale. 7. Breathe in. Exhale. 8. Breathe in. Exhale. 9. Breathe in. Exhale. 10. One last cycle. Breathe in very deeply. Exhale very completely. Relax and breathe normal, your own pace. Your mind wanders, bring it back to just watching the breath. Using the technique. Take a deep breath. Raise your arms up over your head. Bring your hands together. Stretch your back. Stretch your arms. Stretch your neck. Twist your body to the left at your waist as far as you can. Don't hurt yourself. Come back to the center. Twist to the right as far as you can. Come back to the center. Relax your arms. Exhale. Open your eyes. Okay. Thank you. Tonight was a true test.
Gary, you may want to turn your camera on.
Okay, so I say that practitioners, beginning practitioners in the old country, they would go into hermitages to learn how to meditate and so on. But then after they got more proficient, after they became yogis and yoginis and siddhis and female siddhis, they would go into the villages and they would, right in front of everybody in an intersection, a busy intersection, they would do their meditations as a test to see how one point of mindfulness they could be, even among all kinds of noises and distractions and so on. So we got a taste of that. So last week, Adrian had a good question that gave me cause to want to do a little research. And the question was, in the Bardo, as we were talking about, that if someone could be born as a human being, they would like to be born a human being rather than in the lower realms or as a jealous god. But it was also good to be born as a god. And the question was, well, why would we want to be born a god and not a human being? Or why would we be born a human being but not a god? So I did a little bit of research and got in some of my notes and some of my past teachings with Drupal Yeshe Rinpoche, who has been the teacher for many of the Drupans for many, many years, and he taught us back in 2013. He gave us a teaching on the teaching. So the basic answer why someone would want to be born as a god. If you do good deeds of generosity during your life, and you're very conscious of what you do, and you're helping many people, as well as helping yourself and so on, that you can be born a god. And to be born a god is to have a very long life and to have great pleasures and so on. The problem with being born a god is that they have no compassion. They have to be shown compassion. They have to recognize compassion. So for them to be able to become a liberated being, they have to go back into the human realm, because it's in the human realm that you can become liberated, not in the God realm. The God realm, when they are, after they do these things, that they have many people coming to them and praying to them, adoring them and so on, and their inability to have compassion to help these beings, that they fall to the lower realms, because indirectly they caused harm to beings. But if they can consciously go to the human realm, then they can be reborn and be liberated as a Buddha. So that's the reason why we would want to be born a human being, because we have that ability to be liberated. And remember that the 6 realms that we talked about were all psychophysical drama of being a human being in the first place. So whether there's a distinct hell realm, whether there's a distinct hungry ghost realm, and so on like that, we don't know. We can imagine that maybe there is. But through our own lives, we can see that we go through those different realms. So if we're generous, we do good things for other beings, we go into this desire realm of being a god, that we desire this pleasures and so on. So that's why we would want to be born that. If we have great knowledge, the gods have great knowledge, but they have the inability to be able to act on it. So that's the real point right there. So I hope that answers it a little bit better. And so to be born as a human being is the most important thing. I know in many traditions, my father's family was Jewish. They came from Eastern Europe, from Russia. And the word that they would say, if someone was a really good person, they would call them a mensch. And it meant that you're a real human being. So I'm sure in every civilization, in every culture, there is a word like that. They recognize that there's a human being. There are people that are really mensches, really good people who do good things and so on. So that's what we should aspire to for all of ourselves. Okay. So tonight, if you have any questions, anybody, did we lose? Oh, there he is. Gary, if anybody has any questions, just turn your microphones back on, and would you mind? And we can hear what you have to say. So if you have questions or comments, don't hesitate to come on into the conversation, okay? So tonight we're going to talk about the two truths. Thank you very much. So, we've mentioned many times that we have dualistic nature. And because of our dualistic nature, we can recognize these two truths. The truth of the relative and the truth of the ultimate. The truth of the relative is this phenomenal world, is all this world that we see, all this confusion, all the nature, all these things. This is our human nature, is in the relative. We can transcend that, and we can attain the ultimate truth. But we're still within that duality. Okay? So this is in the mind. This is in the mind and the body, and so on. I'm going to try not to say so on so much. Okay. So it says here that the relative truth, our experience of all relative phenomena, which we typically consider to be truly existent and substantial, without investigating their true nature. So this relative nature is what we have been going through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Our physicality is in this phenomenal nature. Our intellect is in this phenomenal nature. So everything is relative. When we discuss it and we're trying to analyze it, we're analyzing saying, well, it was this, but it's not this. Or it's this and it's not that. So we can see that there's all these opposites and so on. So we were talking about this last time when we were talking about impermanence, and we talked about the 8 worldly concerns. They were opposites: pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, gain and loss. So we can see that there's all these dualisms that we operate in. So another way of expressing this is that all this conditioned phenomena, because it has many different aspects to it that are conditioning, that are giving it a relevance to us through the activities of others or ourselves. So we say it's conditioned. An example of that might be if you had a seed for a tree and you put it into the ground, it may not do anything because it may be too dry. There's not enough rain, or there's not enough sunshine, or it's too much rain and there's not enough sunshine to come in. Or you put something on top of it, or another tree, and there's not enough room for that seed to grow. So the conditions are having the right sunshine, having the right nutrients in the earth, having the right rainfall, and having the room to grow, and so on. So this is an example of the condition phenomena. So these conditions are not truly existent. They appear to be existent, and that's what we're going to get to, is being able to see that all this stuff is just manifesting phenomenally. We may not know the causes of them, we may not recognize the causes of them in our ordinary mind, but through our investigation, through our practices, through our meditation and so on, we begin to investigate what that all means and to look at things, to examine what it is for this table to be a table, to recognize that it once was a tree, and before it was a tree, it was a seed, and then once it became a tree, it became a home for many animals and many insects, and then somebody had to cut down the tree. And they had to go through great suffering to do that. They had to drag the tree now, to the sawmill. But meanwhile, that tree that was a home to all these insects and animals, they're suffering because they lost their home. So we can see all this train of things that begin to happen and so on. So this conditioning becomes what we call compounded phenomena. All the different levels of what it takes to be compounded. So a very simple thing, we can look at our body and we can say, okay, here's my hand, and I see that, and I see the skin that I call my hand, but if I can look underneath the skin, then I would see all these muscle tissues, and I would see these different kinds of tissues, and I would see the bones and all of that, and then I would see all the nerves, and then if I looked even closer, then I could see the molecules that are making all these tissues, and if I looked even closer from that, I would begin to see the atoms. So this is all compounded, and all phenomenal nature is made up of all these compounds, all these levels and so on. So we look at compounded conditioned phenomena. We see that they're two slightly different things, but they are part of the phenomenal nature. And it's so exhausting to our mind to be able to comprehend all of this, to understand what all of this is, to take the time to have to think about it all the time. So, because we don't recognize this, is an example of our delusion. Because we begin to think of this as all being permanent. I think my hand is going to be permanent. I think this table is going to be permanent. I think we're not going to die. We're not going to change. So this is an illusion or a delusion that we tell ourselves that this is all permanent and truly exists. So if it truly exists, then it would never die. It would have to be itself, and it would never go away. If my hand, if I cut it off, do I still become Lance? Is this Lance's hand? Is my hand that is now not part of my body anymore, is that me? And the answer would be no, it doesn't. So what about my mind? If I don't think anymore, if I can stop thinking, where is my mind? Where does my mind go? Does it stop? And it's all part of our phenomenal compounded nature. So the delusion is that all this is who I am and who you are, that we begin to think of ourselves in those real terms. But we need to be able to recognize that all this is phenomenal. All this is compounded nature. All this is conditioned nature. So to do that, we begin to recognize the ultimate truth. This is the second truth. The ultimate truth is emptiness. That all this is empty of its own true nature. that my hand does not exist by itself. It's all compounded. I can't get to the one element that says, okay, this is never going to go away. My mind is never going to get to that point where my mind is always going to exist. It's never going to go away. My mind is dependent upon my brain, and my brain is dependent upon my body, and my body is dependent upon my breathing. So it's all part of this phenomenal nature. So this emptiness, we begin to view everything as emptiness. That everything does not have its own inherent nature. That it's all compounded. It's all conditioned. So the essence of what this emptiness is that it pervades all phenomenal nature. It pervades all appearances. All the things we see are just illusions of compounded things. Now, I know this sounds really difficult to be able to wrap our heads around and to be able to practice. But what we are doing is practicing to be liberated from our body, to be liberated from our intellect, to be liberated from our mind. Our mind is dualistic. To be able to give all that up, to be able to recognize that all this is just appearances that we have, that we're clinging on to. When we were in the bardo of reality, we wanted to be born again, to have a body, because we couldn't deal with the reality of freedom. So what we're trying to do is to get familiar with freedom, to be liberated, so that when we go in, when we drop our body, when we die, that we go into this bardo of reality and we say, oh, this is my home, this is my true nature, this is where I need to be. Now, we can't explain it much more than that. It's not ultimate truth. It's not the relative truth. It is something beyond that. Something beyond that is incomprehensible by human beings. But we can experience it through our meditation, through our practices, and so on. So what name we could make for that is, you can make your own name, but you could call it absolute truth. But it's within, or I should say, that all these other things are within this reality, within this true reality. So it's unborn. It's so pure that it's unborn. So when we talked about Vajradhara, this Buddha here, when I've said that this is the primordial Buddha, and he has the essence of bodhicitta within himself, and that essence of bodhicitta is the one thing that all the masters, all the Buddhas, all the bodhisattvas are all comprised of. We have it within ourselves. They realize that. Our job is for us to realize that. In doing that realization, we come to recognize that everything else is empty of its own true nature. Otherwise, we hold on to it, and then we can't see the primordial nature. We can't recognize the primordial nature. So what do we see the primordial nature with? Do we see it with our eyes? No. Do we see it do we hear it through our ears? No. Do we taste it or smell it? Do we touch it? No, because it's all transcendent. It's all beyond our five senses. It's all beyond our mind, our brain. It's something that we experience, and we relate that as a metaphor to our heart center. So it gives us a way to be able to communicate it to ourselves and to each other, to talk about our heart center, and within that, we can recognize love. We can understand love. And when we have that experience of that pure nature, beyond the dualism of relative truth and ultimate truth, we have that sense of oneness. We might come back from that meditation and think of oneness. But even that becomes a false concept. It's beyond concepts. So what we do, what we develop, what the teachers encourage us to abide with is that our empty nature. To be able to let go of our grasping, to be able to let go of our attachments, and so not to be reborn again, not to come back into a body, not to have to do karma. If there is a thought that wants us to do something, we can just cut that thought off. We cannot chase that thought if we choose to. But if we chase that thought, we bring that thought in, and then we act on it, then that action, remember, is called karma. And then that karma has a reaction to it. And then that becomes a karma for something else and so on. So we have to be able to recognize that if we can stop things at the thought level, if we can cut them off and not chase them, then there's no karma. Now you may say, I want to be reborn again. I want to be a human being because I'm not ready for that kind of decision. And that would be perfectly normal for us. And we should appreciate that and say, okay, if I'm going to be reborn again, let me be reborn in a way that I can help other beings, that I'm not selfish, that I can help other beings is the best way to keep me free of self-grasping. And say, I've got work to do. And to accept the point that I have this work to do, that I'm not pure as I want to be. So I have to come back into this life of experience, to kind of hone my, like a knife. You're sharpening a knife, and you get that very perfect edge, so it cuts right through. So each time we come back, we have the ability to hone it more and more and more. Finally, we're able to cut off, and we can remain as a Buddha in our Buddha nature. Now, what does that mean? What is that Buddha nature? It's free of thoughts. We were talking about it today. It's something beyond our comprehension in our mind, but we can experience it. We might experience it as light. We might experience it as the absence of light. It's just darkness. We may experience it as love, as compassion. All these things are concepts. And we have to let go of those concepts. And we have to develop this faith that we were talking about before. And what it ultimately becomes is a clear faith, a clear light. It's beyond the white light. It's beyond the blue light. We can go to the blue light. We can go to the red light, to the green light. We can go to those pure lights, and we can abide within those Buddha fields that are symbolic of that light. But eventually we will be reborn again to come back and to be able to go through a life doing deeds for other beings, and then our life ends, and then we go back into the bardo, and can we remain as a Buddha? So from the perspective of the ultimate truth, no phenomena has any true existence whatsoever. So I just talked about that. And this is true of our subjective mind, as well as its objects, the phenomena that appear to it. So our subjective mind is thinking about I, me, mine. And then the objects that it's seeing, the mind is thinking of those things in terms of I, me, mine. I want that. I don't want that. I'm jealous of that. I'm prideful because I have this. We see that the 5 poisons attach themselves to these objects and our mind starts running, and we start compounding again, we start conditioning. The ultimate truth is neither subject nor object, nor does it have any true existence. There is no mind that is a substantial entity. The nature of mind is also emptiness. So the idea of mind itself is a delusion, relative. These are all concepts that we have created, that human beings have created for themselves to be able to have a sense of purpose, have a sense of understanding in life. But it becomes a source of pridefulness. It becomes a source of hatred, separation between me and others, and so on. So we have to see everything that we do. It gets very, very subtle. How much we are dualistic beings, how much we are in the relative truth and in the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is seeing this emptiness, that none of this truly exists. It's all figments of our imagination. The mind is a figment of our imagination. We see the relative. All this stuff is just compounded stuff. It doesn't exist on its own. The mind doesn't exist on its own. So how do we grasp this? How do we comprehend this? Apprehend this? So the ultimate truth is through direct experience. So that's where I'm saying that through the process of meditation, familiarization. I think we've talked before that the word meditation in Tibetan is gom, G-O-M, and it means familiarization. So every time we go into meditation, true meditation, that we're familiarizing ourselves with that level of freedom, of non-conceptuality, beyond the dualism, beyond the two truths. And we inevitably come back to our bodies because we're only meditating. We haven't died. We come back and then we have to deal with, oh, I'm back. So each meditation, as I think I've said before, is a rehearsal for death, for leaving our body. So it gives us a glimpse of what that true nature is that we talk about in our heart center as an analogy, as a metaphor. We catch a glimpse of that, and the more that we do it, the more broad it gets, the more deep it gets, the more that we abide in that mind. So I don't know if you've ever seen any of these documentaries that you can find on YouTube and places. There's one particular one called The Yogis of Tibet. There's many others that brilliant. I'm sorry, I can't think of the name right now. But they are interviewing some of these great monastics, some of these great yogis, and they all say the same thing. They say, if I told you what happens when I go and meditate, when I spent 25 years in the hermitage, you wouldn't believe me. So why should I tell you? It's just going to confuse you, and it's going to confuse others because you're going to tell them. So until you're ready to experience it yourself, I'm just going to let it be. But you can look at these beings and know that there is something else going on. There is a degree of freedom for them to be able to do that. You know, they'll just sit there and not do anything for as long as they can until somebody comes and interrupts them and asks them a question. Or it's time for them to go eat something mundane like that. But they're perfectly happy just to sit there and do nothing. And for ordinary beings, sometimes that becomes part of the problem that we have to overcome. We have to experience that transcendence to be able to say, oh, I want that again. Because to get to that point is a lot of work. But once you get it, then you say, now I know why I've done it all this time. That's why I've been working at it for all this time. That's why I've had these many lifetimes to get to where I am now, to be able to receive the teachings, accept the teacher, and practice the teachings, practice the Dharma and the meditations so that I can get to that point. So direct experience is one way for this ultimate truth, and it's through the meditation. To get to that point, through the meditation, to get to that, we have to purify our obscurations. We have to recognize what it is that's been blocking us up. We have to purify ourselves. So that's why we've been using the example of, we have this this true nature, and I've used the example of the diamond. Here is this true nature that we have that's at our heart center. But we don't recognize it because it's all covered up. It's all blocked up. It's all covered up with our confusion. It's all covered up with our defilements, with our non-virtuous deeds and things that we have done over the many lifetimes that we've had. So by recognizing that there is something there, and by one, slowly removing those blockages, we suddenly get shards of light that come through. It's not completely pure, it's not completely removed, but we see that a little bit of light comes through. We get those glimpses, and we say, oh, there it is. But as fast as we recognize it, that's how quickly it goes. It leaves. But through time and time over again, practicing, we're able to expand that. We're able to broaden that. We make it deeper. We stabilize it, and we become like those yogis that I was talking about, where they can sit there for long periods of time with no worry about being on their own, being alone. It doesn't, that's the true nature. To just be something that is beyond our everyday dualism, our everyday having to act, having to create karma. We think that we have to create karma all the time. But if we have to create karma, we should create good karma. If we recognize that we are on a path, we have to purify, so we have to engage, we have to create karma, we have to do that. But our ultimate goal is not to create karma. So this develops realization. As we go through this process, we begin to have those shards of light that come through, the realizations of what this means. When we recite the prayers, we recite them 3 times. Does anybody know why we recite them 3 times?
In case we forgot where we were the last time we recited them.
No, not quite. Anybody? Okay. No. The first time we recite it, we're reading the words and we're looking at the outer meaning of what the words are. We're recognizing the words, and they have an outer gross meaning to them. The second time we read it, we're looking at the inner meaning. The meaning that the teacher, that the Lama, has explained to us, what these really mean, what the words connected together make these phrases, and these phrases connected make these sentences, and what they really mean, what the spiritual value of those are. What the deep meaning is. And it brings it to our mind, it brings it to our awareness, and it becomes a cause for us to continue our practice. Each of these prayers that we have in the book are one-pointed mindfulness to be virtuous, to do things for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. We're purifying through those. We're recognizing our that we need to have a motivation, and we are using this as our motivation. It's not a selfish thing. So we're doing that. So the third thing, the third time we recite it, is for its pure spiritual value. For you being able to, over time, to be able to make connections with what this means. What transformations that we have all gone through by doing these prayers over and over and over again, and we begin to see how they play out in our everyday life. And we're able to connect with that. We're able to reflect with that. And remember, the spirituality translated means connection. So we call this the secret meaning. And the reason why it's secret is because it may be a little bit far out to talk to people who are not within the Sangha. If you explain this to them, it's like the yogi who says, if I explained this to you, you wouldn't believe me. So I'm not going to say anything to you because it's just going to confuse you. And you're going to go talk to other people and it's going to confuse them. So I just won't say anything.
Last 12, the first one. What was the first one again?
Was the outer meaning, gross meaning.
Okay.
Okay, the gross meaning. So the secret meaning is something that we can discuss with our teacher. If you make an interview with the teacher, one of the things he might ask you is, tell me about your practice. So what he's asking you is, well, what are the daily things that you go through? But then also, what are the experiences that are happening to you, that you're allowing to manifest? So this is something that you would share with your teacher in that way. You could also share it with your close brothers and sisters within the Sangha, those that you trust, that they're not going to be damaged by your confusion and cast dispersions upon you because you didn't get it in the way that they think that you should get it or something like that. And it makes you vulnerable because now you're getting a little bit naked saying, oh, this is what I think, maybe it's not right. And you don't want to say anything because you don't want to embarrass yourself. You don't want to tell somebody, oh, man, I've been doing this for 2 years and how I've had the wrong idea the whole time. So we kind of hold back or we have doubts about it. So this is called the secret meaning. So as we recite these prayers, the outer meaning, the inner meaning, and the secret meaning, we're reflecting on that and we're bringing it on into our mind stream. We're bringing it into our lives. And we abide there. And then we do our work. We go on with the rest of the practice and so on. And then whatever we develop through the practice, whatever wisdom that we develop, whatever compassion, whatever method we develop, whatever merit we accumulate, at the end, then we're dedicating to the enlightenment of other beings. So the motivation in the beginning was to help all other beings. I go through the practice of doing it, and then I dedicate the merit to other beings. So this is helping us to keep free, to keep purified. The more we do it, the richer the experience becomes. Anybody got any questions, comments about that? Yes.
So when I meditate,
Yes.
after several deep breathing, and then we start breathing on our own, and slowly I become absent from everything, from the phenomenal things, right? And at that point, should we talk about investigating all the true nature and we think about Dharma and should we think at that point, when you're absent, should we think while we're meditating? That's my question. Should we investigate things while we're meditating? If we're meditating and if we're start thinking things, then we're not going to be concentrating at one point. So what kind of process is?
Well, there is a definite process, and to get to that point that you're talking about, where you get absent, you have gone through a whole series of things before that to get to that point. You just don't sit there and that happens to you. I can't do it. Maybe somebody that has the karma to be able to do that can do that, but most of us can't do that. We have to go through the process to get to that point.
Kind of absent.
Well, I know what you mean. But so the point is, your question is, if you're in that state of mind, but then all of a sudden something comes up, then you decide how you're going to deal with it. Do you just cut it off? Do you have the ability to just cut it off? Or do you have to go back to the beginning and back to the shamatha, back to the vipassana, back to the analysis, back to looking at all the things that you do to be able to get back to that point of being absent, as you say. And that absence, I'm relating to that clear mind, that open mind, that rigpa that we were talking about today, that meditative mind. But it takes a lot of work to get there. So it's like what do they call it, a flow chart? What do they call those flow charts? A decision flow chart or something like that?
Paradigms.
What is it?
Paradigms?
No, not paradigms. But it's like, you come to a point and it says, okay, I have a decision to make. Yes, I know what the answer is. No, what do you call it?
Decision tree.
A decision tree. And you say yes or no. So if you say yes, you go down to the next one. And then if you come to another decision, and if you yes, no, if you say yes, you go to the next one. But if you come to any one of those junctures and you say no, well, there's a loop that goes back. It's a feedback loop that goes back, and you have to go restart it again.
So complicated.
Well, in the beginning it sounds complicated, but it's part of the process. It's part of what the mind training is. That's what we're doing. We're training our mind to be able to do this.
When you become transcendent, you're seeing, like the earlier said, you're seeing things from above.
Correct.
That's when you investigate, or you're
And you can see that you're from above, but then, okay, I've got a problem, I'm coming back down. Okay, how do I get back up? And then after a while, as you become more adept at it, it's very easy to say, oh, my consciousness now has caught up. My awareness is now caught up to my meditation, and I'm having thoughts. Now I need to go back and cut off those thoughts. So how stable are we in those practices to get there? So these are the stages of meditation. This is the other part of what we need to practice. So when we do our session, every time we get together, we do a short breathing meditation. And I tell you, I say, when you have a thought, when something interrupts your breathing or interrupts your meditation, you go back to watching your breath. Cut off that thought and just watch the breath. Because what we're doing is developing one-pointed mindfulness.
practice.
It's practice. And we have to do it with great humility. We want to be arrogant. We want to think, oh, I got this. Why am I born a human being? Why am I here? Why am I getting these teachings? Because I'm so good. I'm up here on the levels. And it is a wonderful thing that you're up here on the levels, but you may not be as good as you think you are. There's always going to be someone beyond us. There's always going to be people below us. But we have to have humility about it and recognize that it's a work in progress. As long as we're breathing, we're a dualistic person. We're still caught in reality and the two truths. A Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, he was able to take a human life, to be a human being, and he was able to transcend that duality, that dualistic nature, and he was able to hold it for the next 50 years of his life and be able to teach it, because that's how pure he was. He said, this is how I did it. And it's up to us to be able to do it. And there have been many, many, many thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of Buddhas that have come after him who followed that plan. Any other questions, comment? Okay.
Well, that's just why I think that one of the things that certainly brought me here, and I believe some of the others, is that I knew that there was something missing. And from what I had heard about Buddhism, I thought it was worth exploring to see if I could find that thing that was missing. And I think to some extent that's what you're talking about, at least that's how I'm receiving it.
Yes. No, Buddhism is following the Buddha. The Buddha is the awakened one. His teachings are called the Dharma. And the community of people that are following those instructions, putting it to work, developing the clear faith that this does work, is who we are, what we're doing. So yeah, and many people have a yearning to want to do that. Many people how many people come in here? For everybody that's here tonight, there's been 20 or 30 other people who have come once or twice and haven't come back. But during that time, I know that lights were going off in their minds. Maybe a light in their heart. And it lays a seed with them. And when their conditions are right, then they will begin, that seed will open up, and then they'll come back. Maybe it won't happen in this lifetime. Maybe it won't happen in this temple, but they'll find another temple to go to. Something else that resonates with them a little bit more than this does. And there's no judgment, there's no prejudice about, who they are, what that is. Yes?
The practice, the actual practice.
Yes.
What's the percentage it takes from meditation and practice?
What word? Percentage?
In the whole learning process in Buddhism. So we think Dharma, we argue, we think, we debate, and we receive it, and we process it, and we practice.
Right.
So how much, from your experience, how much percentage?
Well, you've heard the analogy, I'm sure, about the iceberg. That you're out on the ocean or whatever, and you see this iceberg that is sticking up out of the water. And it may be 30 feet, 100 feet high or something like that. You say, oh, what a big iceberg. What you don't see is how immense the iceberg is below the surface of the water. And that's the practice.
Complex.
What's that?
Complex practice.
What, say that again?
It's complex practice.
Contrast?
Complex.
Countless, yes. Countless practices, yes. So being able to know this, to have, they call it the gnosis. There's a Greek word called gnosis. You can vicariously learn about these things. You're hearing it from a teacher. You're reading it in the books. And so you say, oh, I know that. I vicariously experienced it through reading this and imagining what it was like and so on. But then, when you have the actual experience of what's being described in that book, that's called gnosis. Over time, the vicarious experience, you can forget it. Something that you read when you were 20 years old or something, you may have forgotten by now. But when you experience something when you're 20 years old, you will never forget that all through your life. It may be a little bit suppressed, but you can bring that up. So whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, You know, people go, how much money do people spend going to psychologists and psychiatrists to discover the things that they've repressed when they were young kids or something like that? Right? You know, but if you experience this transcendence, that's something that really is transformative. That's something that's very difficult to suppress, and you can always bring it right back. So to answer your question, there's a lot of work there. There's much more practice than there is reading about the academics. And if you have one experience, can bring you great wisdom. That's one of the amazing things. You have all this with you. And through the experience of doing this, it's like unlocking putting a key into a lock, and now all of a sudden this wisdom pops up. And you're having a conversation with somebody, and they ask you a question, or maybe something rises up in your mind that's just pure wisdom. And you think to yourself, where did that come from? It came from this reservoir that you've got within yourself, that is this truth, that is this innate wisdom that we have, that in the right conditions, that comes out. So the practice is the key to be able to open that up. Anybody else have any questions, comments? You want to take a short break and come back and finish this conversation? All right, just take a couple of minutes and come on back, please. To talking more about this emptiness. To understand this emptiness, because this is one of the things in Hinayana, in the first teachings of the Buddha, the initial teachings of the Buddha, which are foundational, we learn discipline. To be able to organize our minds, to put ourselves in the right place so that we begin to continue our non-virtuous ways, that we begin to develop virtue. So we need to be in a disciplined way of life. Then once we do that, now we can open ourselves up to some things that are a little bit more esoteric, a little more further out in our lives. And so this is when emptiness is introduced. The concept, the idea of emptiness, to be able to recognize that all this nature is empty of its own true nature, that it's all compounded and so on. So this emptiness is not just nothingness. It's real, but it's relative to time, it's relative to events, it's relative to each other and so on. This table is real, but the essence of the table is not real. It's compounded. There's not something that is a table that can't be destroyed. So the emptiness is a way of looking at things for our mind to be able to understand. Nothingness would be like nihilism. Nihilism is that nothing matters, there's no explanation for anything, there's no responsibility. We should get away with as much as we can get away with. And there's no reprisals, there's no connection to each other, to other beings or anything like that. We can take advantage of the earth, we can take advantage of each other is nihilism. When we look at some of the extremes of governments and nations, cultures and so on, those that are suppressing people and just taking from them the fruits of their labor, and they justify it with all these kinds of rationales and so on, is a form of nihilism. They have no spirituality. They're not connected. They don't feel connected. On the other side of that, nihilism is eternalism. These are the two extremes. Eternalism is everything's okay. Everything's going to work out. We don't have to put forth too much effort. We're going to be forgiven for all our sins. Everything is fine, you know. So the Buddha said it's the middle way. It's something between those two things. And we can shift our thought, we can analyze things and see that we can kind of vacillate between nihilism and eternalism, but it's the real truth of it is in the middle. And in the middle we can develop no thought. If we don't attach to nihilism, if we don't attach to eternalism, then we are free to be able to just liberate ourselves. So emptiness is not just nothingness. Emptiness is characterized by the enlightened qualities. So what are the enlightened qualities? The enlightened qualities are bodhicitta. And this is, again, what is taught in the Mahayana. This is the middle way path. This is when we recognize that there is loving kindness, that there is compassion, there is joy, and there is equanimity. These are the four immeasurable qualities that all the enlightened beings have. If you were to meet those who are practitioners at the Hinayana level, at the basic level, and I'm not trying to put them down, but I'm just trying to analyze, they would be selfish. They would be arrogant. They could be mean. All these different things because they haven't realized bodhicitta. Whether it was they were exposed to it and they pushed it away, or they were or they weren't exposed to it at all in that particular lifetime. And maybe through that particular lifetime that they're in, they come to the conclusion that, oh, there is something else. I've been on this wrong path, or it hasn't gotten me to where I want to be. Those people that are Hinayanas, they're yogis. They're people that are going into the caves. They're monastics. They're people that are very strict devotees of enlightenment. They think that they can attain enlightenment for themselves, and they don't need to consider other beings. But what happens if you're a real practitioner, you realize if you have bodhicitta, if you've awakened bodhicitta, you say, I can't do this by myself. I can't be free when I know you're suffering. When I know my mother and father, when I know my children, when I know my brothers and sisters are suffering, I can't be free. I am connected to them. And I have something within me that maybe can help them to be able to liberate themselves. I can show them. I realize I've got a light within myself, and I can use that light to illuminate their darkness. So this is the middle way. This is the way of the bodhisattva. The bodhisattva means the holy enlightened being. Not quite a Buddha, but on the path to become a Buddha. So these four immeasurable qualities is what we call bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind. So this mind, remember I said, is dualistic. This mind is relative. This mind is the ultimate truth. But it is delicate in the way that it is prone to confusion. It is prone to impermanence. What's permanent? That experience that we have when we have that glimpse of whatever it is, love, however you wish to define it, that seems permanent. You know, and that's what we all say. And that's why the Buddha said, he can't give you enlightenment. You have to have it yourself, because you won't believe it if you don't experience it yourself. So this loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity is something that we have within ourselves, but it's blocked up. It's part of what this diamond is. When all the defilement, when all the stuff, when all the dirt, all the filth is around this diamond, you don't recognize the bodhicitta. It's there. And what we need to do is to wash it. We need to cleanse it. We need to purify those things, remove those things. And then all of a sudden it starts shining on its own accord, because that's our true nature. that's beyond the mind, beyond the dualism. And this is what all the masters have realized. That's why this hasn't gone away for 2,600 years. And that's why so many beings have been able to follow these instructions and attain enlightenment. So, Nagarjuna was a great teacher who taught about 200 AD, around 500 years or so after the Buddha lived, Sakyamuni Buddha lived. And he kind of articulated the Mahayana pathway. The Mahayana pathway had been taught by the Buddha when he was alive, but it didn't register on ordinary human beings. But he was teaching bodhisattvas, and when the time was right, when the conditions were right, the bodhisattvas began to manifest. And so Nagarjuna brought these teachings and then was able to get them written down, and they became the teachings of the sutras. You know, they became the practices and so on. So Nagarjuna said, there is nothing that is not emptiness. So what that means is, all our conceptions are empty. We have to rise above our conceptions to be able to get to that which is non-conceptual. So again, that's what we have to do with meditation. And who would believe it? He said, there is nothing that is not dependently originated. So he observed that everything that we say, everything that we think, everything that we do is all conditioned by other things. So he said by dependently originated, Nagarjuna meant arising through karmic interdependence. So how does all this come into play? Is through karmic seeds, through those seeds. You know, the things that have been done by yourself, by others, and all together, this makes our phenomenal nature. This makes our culture. This makes our way of life. This makes our conventions of how we think we should live. This karmic interdependence. Karmic interdependence is the relative phenomena, the relative truth, and emptiness, the ultimate wisdom, are actually inseparable. So we see that this dualism is at work all the time. It's a dynamic engine that is creating our lives, that is recreating our lives, and this is the merry-go-round that we're on. And we have to make a decision that I want to get off the merry-go-round, to use it in very simple terms. You know, and you might say, well, why do I want to do that? I like being on the merry-go-round. I'm having fun. You know, but when you see the suffering of beings, we may have it pretty good. Like I said last week or so, we might be the beings that lots of other beings around the world think are gods. But we still have our suffering, and we recognize that, and it could be better. And we're ready to trade this in for something that is beyond that. We know things in 3 dimensions. Everything that we know is in 3 dimensions. You know, we can measure it, we can weigh it, we can touch it, we can feel it, we can see the height, we can hold it, all these things. But what's to say that there's not 4 dimensions? Or 5 dimensions, or 6 dimensions, or 10 dimensions, or 16 dimensions that we don't recognize. We may be able to have a perception of them. I don't know if you've ever had the sense that there's something at your back that is kind of guiding you in a particular direction. You know, and maybe that's a perception of something that is beyond what we can recognize. Maybe that's wishful thinking. But in any case, to say that it doesn't exist because we can't recognize it, because we can't weigh it and so on, is closing your mind, is arrogantly thinking that if you can't see it, if you can't weigh it, it's not true. And there are things beyond our nature as human beings that we need, that we can tap into. And when we do, there is this liberation, there is this enlightenment, there is this freedom. And if you can meet people that have achieved that, you know that it's real. It's true in their lives anyway. And that can be inspiration for you to keep on doing what you're doing, to develop this, to find this in your own life. So this relative truth and this ultimate truth are inseparable from each other. This emptiness and this relative are inseparable. It's two sides of the same hand. It's what our mind does. It's the way it works. It's our dualistic nature. So karmic independence is the intricate weaving together of causes, conditions, and karmic results. So we are here because of our good karma, no doubt. It's perfectly clear. You may have negative karma that impedes you in different ways, but your good karma is definitely predominant. It's definitely predominant in your lives. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So karmic interdependence itself is also empty in nature. So this karma is relative. And our goal is to neutralize karma, to not create new karma, good karma or bad karma. Thus, the truth of karmic interdependence, relative truth, directly and naturally points to the truth of emptiness, ultimate truth. And they are inseparable. So naturally, the key word here is naturally. What is natural? And to be able to examine that is really interesting. And this is vipassana, looking into the nature of mind. We have shamatha, calm abiding meditation, where we'll one-pointedly be able to focus our attention, and then all this energy comes together, and it's like sitting there waiting to be unleashed. And then through the vipassana, we now give it something to do. And we start going through all the different permutations of what all these things can mean. And we exhaust all these things. We go through these things. We contemplate all these things. And we just get to the point where there's no more thought. I've thought about everything. And if I haven't thought about it yet, maybe it'll come to me, another dimension, something else will come to me, but I've got an open mind. I haven't closed my mind. And then what happens is we begin to have that rigpa. We begin to have that open mind. We begin to have that non-conceptuality. The relative and ultimate can't actually be separated because they exist simultaneously. They are actually indivisible. Appearances do appear, yet their essence is the nature of emptiness. Their essence is the nature of emptiness. We are human beings who have our nature, our human nature. Our human nature is dualistic. And as long as we are looking at things through our human nature, it's always going to be obscured. We can logically go through things and be able to see that what we're doing and the neuroses that we go through and the thoughts that we go through, and we can see the karma and everything. But until we transcend that process, we transcend that monkey mind, and have that transcendent experience of our true nature, then that's what makes the difference. Then it becomes the gnosis that I mentioned before. Otherwise, we're still caught in our ordinary mind. And until you have that experience yourself, you're going to be, you continue to be trapped into this human nature. Thank goodness we have it, but thank goodness we have the ability to liberate ourselves from it. If you remember when we talked about the 6 realms of human existence weeks ago, and there was a Buddha in each one of those 6 realms. You remember that? There was a sage in each one. Excuse me. And in the human realm was Buddha Shakyamuni. And Shakyamuni had the bowl. He was holding the bowl of Dharma nectar, Dharma elixir, which was the wisdom of how to manifest the cessation of suffering. And he had the staff. I don't know if you remember the staff. He had the staff, and it's like the staff that's out on the statue out front here. It's the Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha. And it's this long, thin staff, and on the top of it are these rings that rattle together. They're always rattling together. And he would use them to demonstrate to do no harm. That's what that symbolized means. To do no harm and to be able to utilize, to manifest that bowl of nectar, Dharma nectar, that he's holding for human beings to overcome their attachment, to become educated, to become generous, to recognize the 5 wisdoms of the 5 Buddhas.
Mr. Len.
Yes.
So wouldn't those, this 4 immeasurable are also a kind of attachment?
Sure, they could be, yeah, absolutely.
Like in Buddhism, you're not supposed to have a kind of attachment.
Correct.
It should be about all.
We can develop spiritual pride. That's called spiritual pride. When we start thinking, oh, I'm better than everybody, I've got bodhicitta. You know, and that's a false grasping. Yeah, absolutely. So we have to remain humble. We have to maybe develop our humility, our humbleness, you know, and not get, you know, some people I know think that they always have to be teaching people. They've got a little bit of stuff, you know, you ask a Buddhist something, and for 25 minutes he can just start talking until you're blue in the face, or he's blue in the face, you know, because of spiritual pride. Instead of maybe just answering a question very succinctly and having a conversation. So that's too much bodhicitta in that way, you know, or pridefulness of that bodhicitta. I don't think you can have too much bodhicitta, but it's the pridefulness of it that makes the difference. And that's what leads to, that's part of what the God realm is about. They start thinking that they're better than other beings, that they're more enlightened than other beings. So yeah, so we have to be on guard for that. So these, so the relative and ultimate truths can't actually be separated because they exist simultaneously. They're actually in the, appearances do appear, yet their essence is the nature of emptiness. So these things still happen. You know, the question came up today about, does the Buddha recognize suffering? Does the Buddha have suffering thoughts? It was something like that, wasn't it? Do you remember that question?
Yeah.
You know, and the Buddha sees the suffering, but is not affected by the suffering. The very nature of the Buddha is loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity for the benefit of other beings. But you've got to meet the Buddha halfway. Buddha Shakyamuni, you know, figuratively has his hand out. Each one of those Buddhas in the 6 realms figuratively have their hands out, but it's up to ordinary beings to grab the hand. and to accept that teaching that they each provide. So these appearances are there, these, and they're just manifestations of all this compounded nature. And we have to see them all as temporary, as illusory, like a rainbow. If you look up at a rainbow, you say, oh wow, look at that beautiful rainbow. But the closer you get to it, it just disappears. But if you get further enough away, you'll be able to see that it's there. Or it's like looking into a mirror. You say, oh, look at that, I want that object, and you go to grab it, and you're hitting the mirror. You're not hitting that object that you think you want. So that's mirror-like wisdom, is recognizing that all things are appearances. So we develop our minds to do this. Just hearing this, just saying this, just reading this a couple of times doesn't make any difference. We got to practice this. We have to experience this through our meditation so that we have the cognizance, we have the realization of what that means. The mind is indivisibly both clarity and emptiness. And he was talking about that today. The mind does have experiences and perceives everything, which is clarity. Yet the mind's nature is empty or emptiness. So we go through these experiences, but the experiences are beyond our dualistic nature. That's why they are experiences. And even those great yogis say, who would believe me? I have no words for it, really. To press on another point, how do I explain it? And you can meet, those who have had these experiences, and there's kind of a recognition. Sometimes you can be wrong. You don't go up to somebody and say, "Oh, you realized? Do you have enlightenment?" It doesn't matter. So emptiness, when one realizes the true nature of mind, then appearances are understood to be inseparable from one's mind's essence, which is emptiness. When one realizes the true nature of mind, what I'm talking about, then appearances are understood to be inseparable from the mind's essence, which is dualistic nature, which is emptiness. And appearances and emptiness are also indivisible. Thus, relative truth and ultimate truth are similarly indivisible. Therefore, the dualistic mind is the true truth. If we're looking for something that is absolute beyond this, we have to go beyond being a human being. Transcend being a human being. So somebody asked a question a couple of weeks ago about certainty, and was asking about certainty, uncertainty. Was that you? Yes. Yeah. So the certainty that we have is that all this is what our mind is, this dualistic nature. And the uncertainty is, will we be able to transcend this? So everything is impermanent. Everything is emptiness. The only thing that we have that is certain is the impermanence of all of that. It's all just an illusion. That's what we know is certain. It's all just temporary. So that's why we can be free. We have no expectations. We become simpler. We're not going to chase after things that have no end to them. We just abide very simply and be happy with what we have. Be thankful. We have our brothers and sisters. We guide each other. The Sangha, we guide each other. When we say the food offering, if you go to your book, maybe I've pointed this out to you before, but if you go to page 13 in your book, this is the food offering. So we try and recite this every time we have a meal together. So it says, the precious Buddha is the supreme teacher. That's one of the definitions of the word Buddha, the awakened one, the teacher. And then the precious Dharma is the supreme protection. That the Buddha's mind, or the Buddha's speech, which is a function of his brain, this system is our protection to keep us from continuing on this path of defilement and confusion and so on. We can pull ourselves out of this. And then the precious Sangha is the supreme guide. So this is the precious Sangha. We're part of that. This may be the ordinary Sangha, but there are the 8 great bodhisattvas who are the perfect Sangha, the noble Sangha. And they are the highest perfected levels of being a human being. And by recognizing them, what they represent, and bringing that into our lives, allowing ourselves to recognize that as features, facets of this diamond, then we are open to that guidance that they provide. And then we can provide it to each other and so on. To these 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, these are the objects of refuge. Objects of refuge. So in our confused minds, in our mind of dualistic nature, we're creating these objects. Because through them, we are actually able to one-pointed, mindfully focus on our task to liberate ourselves. I make this offering of food. I'm making this offering of food so that I have another day of a healthy body to be able to continue my work to purify myself. If I didn't feed myself properly, I would waste away and die being very weak and losing all my abilities, all my spiritual ability to meditate and all my contemplative ability to be able to think properly and to be able to sit upright and do the things that I need to do with my physical body. So I need to take care of my body. I need to have this food. So we say, Om Ahom, the body, the speech, and the mind. Om Ahom of the Buddha. May my body, speech, and mind become the same as the Buddha's, inseparable from the Buddha's. Okay, so anybody got questions, comments? Thank you all very much for paying attention. Okay. Everybody all right at home? So next week, who's that? Okay, so next week will be our last week for this cycle. So I have to look at the book, refresh my memory to think about what we're going to talk about. We could talk about the 3 Buddha family, or the 3 bodies of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. We could talk about that, which would be good. We could talk about training the mind in the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. That would be a good teaching too. So does anybody have any comment about any of that? And then we're going to take a week off, the first weekend of March, and we're going to have a retreat that is going to be down in Chesapeake Beach, Maryland. And if you'd like to come, it's going to be a Bardo Todal teaching on the popular name is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it identifies the process of going into the bardo of reality. We're in the bardo of living. And to go into the bardo of reality, and then the subsequent bardo of becoming, to be reborn back into the bardo of living. And it's very symbolic, and what it prepares us for death. It articulates the meditative experience, what it is to meditate, and to transform ourselves. From every time we go into a meditation, we're like being reborn again. So this articulates how that works through the symbolism. So we're only going to be able to do the first part of this, but it'll be the first part of other parts to come. So if you're interested in doing it, it's like a closed retreat. So you would come and stay there for Friday night, Saturday night, and leave on late Sunday. So it'll be a really good weekend. So anyway, so if you come to that, great. If not, we'll be back together on March 14th. So we'll start over again, and we'll try and keep it fresh. And I think that maybe we should concentrate a little bit more on practice and a little bit less on the philosophy, but practice, talk about the stages of meditation book and start developing, that meditation. So there will be long periods of time during our 2 hours where maybe we're meditating for 10, 15, 20 minutes a couple different times, and developing the technique to be able to meditate at home and on your own and so on. Because that's the most important part, like we talked about. Okay? All right. So no other questions? Everybody's mind is sufficiently blown? You see, it didn't take any drugs, did it? The truth will set you free. Okay. So we go to page 18, and we read through page 22. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dormolorgampopa, Pagmadrupa, and Lordri Kompa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa, Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, Mars and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om Ah Hong. Om Ah Hong. Om Ah Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha and all the enlightened ones. Om Ah Hong. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you both, Gary, and thank you, Amanda. All right. And this week, Monday is Losar.